Hey YouTube, long time no talk. Just been busy. Life is good, or surviving anyways. And just wanted to talk about some of the things that are happening around the world. First, start off with I'm in a new car. After the U.S. and Israel's war of choice, I know that the U.S. doesn't do short wars, and it was a bad time to have a big V6 engine. So I sold that. I sold my Lexus, and I picked up a new to me Tesla. Um, and yeah, it's very economical to drive. But what I want to talk about today is kind of like what's going on in the Middle East, and it's just I hear all the bullshit that's coming out, and I kind of laugh. Oh, we're close to a deal, we're not close to a deal. And then, every now and then Trump goes back to his maximalist demands. And it's just kind of, I think uh, the biggest obstacle to peace in the Middle East and, stopping the war with Iran is Trump. Because he, like, not only does he need to win, he needs to completely humiliate his opponent, right? And that's, I mean, you can tell by some of the things that him and his staff has said. He's like, he doesn't understand why Iran doesn't just capitulate already. And I think to myself, if I were Iran, Iran holds all, I like using a phrase that Trump likes to say, Iran holds all the cards, right? Um, I don't think they really care too much about the world economy, considering that I believe they're the second most sanctioned country in the world. So, whatever happens to the world economy doesn't really affect them too much, right? But they certainly have the U.S., Israel, and the rest of the world over the end of a barrel here. And I'm just saying that I'm not saying that. First thing I want to make it clear is I don't like the Iranian government. I do not like religious theocracies. But if I were them, I would hold out. I would have no. I would feel no. I would be in no rush to make a deal with the Americans. I mean, first thing is, can you believe? Can you trust anything the Americans say? Right. The last two times they were negotiating, the Americans bombed them, and it's just kind of funny reading about the negotiations in February about how Iran put on the table, their nuclear program and everything, and they actually had a very, very compelling offer. But the American negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, were too stupid to understand what Iran was offering. And I mean, like, even now, why would you believe anything the Americans say? Right? Just look at how Trump deals with his allies, right? All those trade deals that he signed, that he goes back on because he doesn't like what someone says. Iran would be completely retarded to believe anything that comes out of Trump's mouth. Um, and when I look at it when I tried again, I live in Canada, and I try to be objective about these things as much as I can. If I were Iran, they need one of two things. They either need a nuclear weapon, or they need the Strait of Hormuz, or control the Strait of Hormuz. They have to have one because that's their deterrence, right? If they give up both, what's going to happen is Libya is going to happen to them. Syria is going to happen to them, right? Syria, Libya, Iraq, they were attacked because they didn't have nuclear weapons. No one messes with North Korea because they have them, right? And I think if you look at the history of nuclear weapons, they're a stabilizing force. Whether we like it or not, I mean, again, I will put out there my official position is I am not for nuclear proliferation. But if I mean, it's kind of like here, if everyone has a gun, I want a gun, right? If everyone, if I'm thinking, if I were Iran and my enemies have nuclear weapons, I want nuclear weapons, right? And that's just the real sad reality of things. Another sad thing is, it's just it's just funny how we can't trust anything Western news says, whether it's the American news outlets, or it's been very entertaining watching Barack Ravid at Axios trying to manipulate the markets, Trump manipulating the markets every weekend. Although I did read something that's kind of funny is like the past Memorial Day weekend would have been a perfect opportunity for the Americans to attack Iran, because the markets are closed for 3 days, right? So blitz Iran really hard, and then hopefully see if you can kind of work, get them to capitulate, right? But maybe Iran played Trump by saying that we can make a deal, and kind of just drag things out so that he loses that opportunity. Whatever deal does happen, we're really screwed. The whole world is screwed. I do investments on the side, and when I look at what the futures market is pricing in oil as, I'm like, are you guys insane? Right? If you look at the difference between the spot price, so that's the real price, and the futures price, what oil paper traders are expecting oil prices to be, they're off by like $20 a barrel, $50 a barrel, right? Look at what Asian countries are paying for actual oil, right? $150 a barrel. It's terrible, because whether we like it or not, oil drives the world, and everything is. If we thought 2020, if we thought inflation after COVID was bad, wait for inflation in the latter half of this year, right? Right now, the U.S. is trying to settle down the markets by releasing a lot of its strategic reserves. And I think I read there's an oil analyst on Twitter that I follow, and he was saying that in about 2 weeks' time, the U.S. will be at historic lows since they started creating the strategic reserve, right? And how China is they've actually helped the world economy a lot by dipping into their commercial reserves and not importing as much oil as possible. There's a few reasons, right? It's because from what I've read, a lot of importers, they don't actually want to pay what the oil prices are right now, so they're relying on their reserves, and that works for a short period of time, but reserves are going to run out, and then when the reserves start to run out, we're going to have even more competition. It's not just the usual business competition for oil and oil products, but also countries are going to start to need to fill up their reserves, and other countries are going to consider creating their own strategic reserves, especially countries in Asia, right? The poorer countries, India, Thailand, Vietnam, South Korea is going to probably increase their reserves, Japan, Australia. They're going to be competing for the same oil that we will be competing that we will want once things do get better, hopefully. Going back to the inflation side of things, inflation is going to get worse. In fact, I tell my wife, I said, buy what you need now, because inflation is going to get worse. Shipping oil moves the goods around the world. Diesel moves goods around everyone's country, okay? And the prices of there have increased massively. We haven't felt anything yet. Now that I drive an electric car, it does make me feel better when I drive by a gas station that I don't have to deal with that right now. And electric cars are very economical to use. I had to drive somewhere downtown. It was about 40 kilometers each way. In the morning, it cost me $1.10 Canadian in electricity to drive to where I need to go, and coming back, I had to deal with rush hour, which kind of sucked, but all that stop and go really helped my car regen, and it cost me 80 cents to come back to drive 40 kilometers. So if you've been thinking about going electric, and one of the things that I didn't want to go electric for a long time, mainly because I worry about range anxiety and whatnot, and but Now that I do have an electric car, I wish I did it sooner. But that's another thing. Inflation is going to get a lot worse, right? Food inflation. I think it was what was this? Some American Farmers Association in the U.S. was saying that food prices in the fall are going to go up 38%, which I thought was a really oddly specific number to choose. But all the input costs for food is going up. We all know about fertilizer. There's diesel, and it was whether we can actually get the stuff that they need, right? So yes, stock up while you can on non-perishables, canned goods, anything that you can, because you're just, whatever you get now compared to what you get later, you're just saving money, right? I did the same thing during COVID, and I remember my wife was like, "Oh, why are you buying all this food? We don't eat all this stuff," when I was packing my freezer. And I was like, I remember when I was buying ground beef for like $4 Canadian, for like 500 milligrams of meat, right? And now the same food costs, I don't know, $8-9 a pound, right? And so I'm like, do it now. You're gonna save a lot of money, right? Unfortunately, when you do that, right? I mean, that's how people get into shortages and everything like that. But being selfish, it is coming, right? And I think Iran knows very well that they are now a regional power, right? They took on both the U.S. And Israel, and they came out stronger, right? Don't get me wrong. Iran took a beating. Okay, Iran did take a beating, and obviously, they lost their, they lost a lot of their leaders and everything like that, right? But as a society, they are more resilient than we are here in the West, right? They're definitely more resilient than the countries in the Middle East, right? Whether it's the Gulf countries or Israel, Iran can take the pain more than we can. Of course, if it were up to me, we wouldn't even start that war to begin with. I think it's kind of funny. When a lot of people talk about the war in Ukraine, people say, "Oh yeah, we're 4 years into Russia's 2-week war in Ukraine and whatnot, right? And now how's that going with the U.S., right? They expected it to take 4 days, and now we're 3 months. 3 months was it? March, April, May. Yeah, 3 months into, 3 months into the 4-day war. I think it's illustrated that the U.S. is much more powerful than Russia is, but they are very much a paper tiger when it comes to dealing with modern day threats. The U.S. American Western weapon systems are just as ineffective as the legacy Russian systems are. And I mean, looking at other potential hotspots around the world, if I were China, I'd make a move on Taiwan, right? The Americans aren't going to come to the rescue. And if I were the Taiwanese, I would see what's going on in the Ukraine and in the Middle East, right? And stock up on drone warfare. I mean, the problem is China's is also very invested in that type of low cost warfare as well. So I don't know how when you have two low cost warfare's entities fighting each other, then it really ends up being who can build faster, right? And I think China probably would have the upper hand there. But I mean, even then, China probably doesn't even need to fire a shot, right? You can let Taiwan starve of energy by what the U.S. is doing, really, and they can come to the rescue. Whether Taiwanese people would I guess capitulate, and because they need the energy is yet to be seen. But it's very clear now that the U.S. weapon stocks are at minimums, and they cannot come to the aid of Taiwan. Or that, you know, realistically speaking, I don't think the U.S. can really come to the aid of anybody now. You know, any of their allies, whether it's other than maybe at a nuclear level. But if it doesn't, you know, some conventional war, no, they can't. You know, they have the nicest, the prettiest weapons, but they don't have the scale, right? Especially if you're going to fight in China's backyard, right? Obviously, the U.S. military is stronger than China, and if you were to say pick any spot around the world and said, okay, we're going to meet here and fight, the U.S. will win because they're stronger. But if you are going to pick a fight in China's backyard with China's manufacturing capability, yeah, the U.S., you know, the Americans, they can't win there. So it should really be an eye opener for all of the American allies around the world. It is a complete shit show, and things are gonna get worse. All right, so please prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Save money if you can. Alternatively, buy what you need. Change your life however you can, because that energy shock is going to come no matter what type of rosy picture the politicians try to tell you. It's gonna get bad, and you need to prepare yourself, because they're not, no one's gonna come to the rescue here, right? You can't print more oil, you can't print more diesel, you can't print more engine oil, right? Hell, there's that news article, news last week, that engine oil in the U.S. anyways is in very short supply. I'm friends with my mechanic, and he was telling me the same things. As, yeah, and it's hard to get engine oil now, at least at the quantities that he needs. My local stores still seem to have oil available, so my wife is still driving. She's driving a gas hybrid, at least, so you know, it's not. She drives a small hybrid, so it's not. It doesn't use quite as much energy as a regular car. But you know, I picked up 15 liters of oil, 3 filters, so that should cover, you know, the next 3 oil changes for her. So that should be about maybe a year and a half of oil changes, you know, just in case. I picked up some oil for my some motor oil and an oil filter for my mom. She only drives like 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers a year, so that's going to be you know, that'll cover for the year anyways. We really do elect the stupidest people to lead us. Individually, people are smart, but as a group, we're idiots, and you know, our elected representatives do really represent the stupidest among us. Anyways, that was a bit of a rant, so thank you as always for listening. I don't know when my next video is going to be. You know, I just do this for fun. It's kind of enjoyable to kind of yell into the void a little bit every now and then. We'll see when my next one is. Hopefully the world will be in a better place. I don't have any faith in it. All right, thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.